Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Red Cat holdings. It is time for another update, and today we'll be discussing the extension we have managed to follow through within very nicely since the previous video within this area, as well as the possibility of a more significant local top to be in place. Well, we'll be discussing more about that in a moment, but before that I want to go quickly through the larger time frame for any of you who might be new to provide the full context. Now, in this structure we are ideally tracking a larger leading diagonal. This would expect to have a wave 1 here, a wave 2 down, and now we would be within the wave 3 to the upside, within which we expect to form an ABC structure. Within this pattern, the wave A could have formed a more significant top, but then we would normally expect to get to the ideal area of support, for a correction in the wave B, which is right now between the $4.2 all the way down to the $1 level. And since we have actually failed to do so, and it is very simple for us to track continuation higher, an extension of this 3-wave move to the upside in a 5-wave move to the upside, we have been heavily favoring this yellow interpretation. Now, this could be still part of the white scenario. It could be just an extension of the wave A, and once we form a top within this area, we would still be looking for the correction in a wave B and a wave C to form the larger pattern. And certainly, we can even look for an ideal target for such a structure. It would be the 138.2% extension of the wave 1 to complete the larger wave 3. Before that, I wouldn't consider it with high probability, but this is the bullish case. This is the bullish scenario, because within this interpretation, we would expect a wave B correction and a C wave to complete the 3rd wave to the upside. Well, this doesn't need to be a wave A within the yellow interpretation. It could also be just an ABC structure throughout the entire pattern that we are tracking on this chart. In such a scenario, we could very easily expect an even more severe correction, even a very significant top and head to new all-time lows once we have this wave C complete. It would be a full pattern. It would not expect any continuation higher, but this will heavily depend on the market outlook, on the company future prospects. It will head likely in a larger correction, and depending on the potential it has, it will follow one scenario or the other, because right now within both interpretations we are still following this yellow structure, this yellow scenario, and the market will not even need to decide which interpretation it follows until it gets to the last level of support for a possible wave B. It can go all the way down there and still keep the same probabilities for continuation higher within this wave 3. Now, with that said, we can focus on the smaller time frame right now. Again, we are heavily preferring the yellow interpretation, in which we would expect to extend a little bit higher within this 5th wave. Within this structure, in yellow, we are tracking a diagonal pattern. Now, within a wave A, it would be called a leading diagonal. Within a wave C, it would be called an ending diagonal. Doesn't matter, within both scenarios, within both waves, we are tracking the same pattern. We are looking for an ABC structure to complete this 5th wave to the upside, and this has actually been quite an interesting structure. It has provided us an initial 5-wave move to the upside within a leading diagonal in the wave A. We were tracking a high probability area of support between the $10.2 all the way down to the $6 level ever since we topped within this wave A, and we were expecting with high probabilities that after a 3-wave correction into this area of support, we should see with high probabilities once again at least another 5-wave move to the upside. This has been following through flawlessly. We have pushed into the last level of support, and we have already pushed beyond even the internal resistance levels, which we will show in a moment here. But realistically, anyone who would have used this area of support for an entry would be in very significant profits. Even from the first level of support I provided you, the $10.18 level, we would currently be in over 40% profits. For whoever used the last level of support, around the $6 level, we would be at 140% in profits. This is why these areas of support are so relevant. This is why we are tracking this initial 5-wave move to the upside. It is going to provide us a high probability reversal and structure to extend in at least another 5-wave move to the upside, which allows us for a very good risk-reward ratio, a very high potential trade setup, and clearly defined levels of failure, clearly detailing that if we fail to hold the 78.6% retracement, we are going to see a failure. Yeah, that is why we have the great risk-reward ratio. We did get here a small wick below the last level of support, but that is not a sustained break. That is nothing that should concern us. And yeah, we did manage to create this structure to the upside very, very nicely. Now, within this smaller time frame, within this supposed wave C to the upside, we could expect it to form a 5-wave move. That is all it really needs. It doesn't need to form anything more than that really. But within it, we may actually form an initial wave 1 within this area. We may form a wave 2 correction, and then we would expect an extension. In such a pattern, I would see this structure unfolding even potentially as an impulse, yeah, especially if we manage to build the entire 5-wave move to the upside within this initial wave 1. But at the same time, it doesn't need to, and a more significant top could be closer than you may think. Because remember, the ideal target, I provided you this in the previous video, but the ideal target for the wave C is the 100% extension of the wave A. That is, in this case, around the $21 level. It doesn't even need to get to that target to be considered a wave C complete. It could of course exceed it, yeah, in the case of a larger wave 1 and a wave 2, we would actually expect to exceed it severely. But yeah, I have to say, there is a very good chance we may form a significant top within this initial 5-wave move to the upside within this area, and I would be watching out for that, yeah. And while we did have already a very nice ride, we have risen over 150-160% from the low to the top, we need to have an exit strategy. We need to have a plan for the potential of this structure not forming such a large extension. Now, I would still expect to see the entire 5-wave move. At this point, I wouldn't consider this structure complete, but within this structure, within this 5-wave move, we may need to consider a more significant top within wave 3 to possibly be in place at this time. Now, as I was saying, we did manage to break the area of resistance we were tracking, and we broke above it. We used it as support and extended even higher. I wouldn't track this orange interpretation anymore. Yeah, sure, a larger ABC structure could still occur. It could still technically take us to lower prices, but it's not going to be a high probability interpretation. Now, remember, within this wave C, currently we are tracking an ending diagonal, meaning that within each of the subwaves, once again, we are only looking for ABC structures, yeah? ABC here, and now ABC within the wave 4 and ABC within the 5th wave to the upside. And it is certainly possible that we see still an extension within this wave 3. It is certainly possible for me to consider this to be instead the wave 1 top, to have this as a wave 2 bottom, and have only built so far a wave A part of the wave 3, get a wave B and a wave C to the upside. But the area of support we would be tracking in that case, in that scenario, would be pretty much identical with what we would be tracking for a correction in a wave 4 in the assumption that we have formed a more significant top within the wave 3. Now, before I provide you that area, let's go a bit through the structure we have been tracking. So, in this current idea of the wave C, we have been looking for an impulse to form within this area. We have been tracking this as a 1-2 setup, a 3rd wave up, a 4th wave down, and then a 5th wave to form here. This has been in the yellow interpretation. We had here this area of support, in which we actually did get briefly here, and it was quite a weak correction and nothing too significant. We have formed another corrective pattern to the upside and another low, but nothing too significant. We didn't even manage to form a lower low. I would still consider this to be the wave 4 bottom, yeah, most likely. And I would consider this 5th wave doesn't actually need any additional extensions higher. Now, we were also tracking this blue interpretation that would consider this to be instead a 1-2 setup, where technically a 3rd wave, yeah, this wave 3 could have still extended higher. I don't necessarily consider this to be the case. I do actually heavily prefer that this is the 5th wave part of the larger wave C. Now, in such a scenario, we can still track continuation higher. Within this 5th wave, I'm looking at an ending diagonal, in which I would consider this to be something like a 1, 2, 3, 4th and the 5th. Now, within this 5th wave, while we don't need any extensions higher, we could still get another high, and I want to make it clear, I'm not calling a top. Especially within these small time frames, it is very difficult to track down an exact pattern, especially, even more so, within diagonal structures. It might even fail the area of support I can provide you here in this tiny time frame and still manage to extend higher, but I wouldn't necessarily focus too much on it. It can be an area that I would use as a signal, honestly, that if we break below the $13.6 level, the last level of support, it is rather preferred that we have formed a more significant top within this wave 3, and that I would like to see the larger correction in the wave 4 occur. Now, for such a scenario, I can even provide you another area of support, and this is actually what I would recommend focusing on. Within this area, we can still look for the correction and for continuation within the fifth wave to the upside. That could very well take us to the ideal target for the wave C around the $21 level, especially if we don't get too deep into this retracement. But yeah, as long as we hold here the area between the $12.6 all the way down to the $9.3 level, I would be looking with high probability for continuation within, at the very least, a fifth wave to the upside to complete the larger pattern. And remember, this would be expected to form within an ABC structure. But right now, yeah, we need to consider that a third wave top could be in place. We are still allowing extensions higher. I'm not outruling those, but especially also based on the divergences we see here on the chart, even on the 4-hour time frame, yeah, we can tell this could be coming to an exhaustion very, very soon. An ending diagonal has emerged within this area. We may form again another high, and we would have an even better and full structure than we currently have, but we don't need it. And a larger correction could take place at any point now. We are within some of a risk area. Yeah, it's not necessarily the worst spot to be in. Yeah, we are towards the end of an uptrend, and we are thinking whether we should take some profits. Well, it is often recommended that we do take some profits towards the end of the wave 3. We sometimes get failures, even in the case where we would have quite a clear structure that would allow continuation higher. We sometimes fail. And of course, we have here the 61.8% retracement to track such a signal. It would tell us that this structure is very, very likely going to fail to form a reliable pattern. Now, that doesn't mean it cannot absolutely extend higher, but it would be quite a great warning sign that this structure could get into the larger retracement without forming an additional high. But for now, this is not necessarily a high expectation. For now, we are still even above the area of support, and for now, even the wave 3 could still extend higher. And for now, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.